We know we want to get there, but we literally don't know how to be different. I think I'll give an example. I work with a lot of people who say, that's not the right page. Why aren't you looking at the right page? With dyslexia shows up a little different. Mine shows up like, if I don't have a file cabinet to put it into, I don't know what to do with those files, right? So I can't, if you just give me free floating ideas, I am never following you.
Welcome everyone to another wonderful day and another wonderful podcast with another clueless Eli, because I do not have a clue what this lady does. I do know she's dyslexic, but I'm sure more is going on in the background. But other than that, I know nothing. And her name is Ilene Marcus. Welcome, Ilene Marcus.
Thank you. Thank you.
It is nice to have you here, and I am looking forward, and I can tell you, listeners, I am looking forward to hearing from her, because we had a quick chat for about 2 to 3 minutes, and she is straight as a die. She does not go around the mulberry bush, which is what we spoke about, and I like a person that's straightforward, easygoing, and tells you as it is. So, Irene, with that said, tell us as it is and tell us what you do to help with your successful business.
No, I don't even know. It's Ellie or Eli?
It's Eli.
Eli. It's Eileen with an L, because I fall over.
Uh-huh.
Actually, I'll talk about that later. But so what do? I manage annoying people. And basically, I got into this business because I'm annoying. And it's not just because I'm dyslexic or, I might be an addict and I might have other issues. It's just how I've learned to show up in the world, because I grew up in a family that everyone went around the mulberry bush. I remember that book. I remember that song. Nothing was ever straightforward. And I could never understand why we couldn't drive down the middle and get there. And then when I started to drive down the middle, little things popped up that got in my way. So what I do is help people manage themselves to get out of their own way, to move forward with usually business goals. I'm starting to work with people more in personal goals, because they're very interrelated. What keeps us stuck in our business life keeps us stuck in our personal life, right? I love that quote, wherever I go, there I am. Can't get away from myself. And if I'm annoying, and if I show up anxious and nervous and I forget how to do things and I'm insecure, that's going to show up no matter how strong my skill set is, no matter how prepared I am. So I help people find those places where they get in their own way and then move themselves, their company, their product, their team to success.
Okay, so how long have you been doing this for? Is this a newish adventure, or has this been going on for quite some time?
This iteration of me has been going on for about 10 years now, managing annoying people. And before that, I managed very large government nonprofit systems. So I have been oversight or in charge of 10,000 people in a system serving 1.2 million people. So I've always been responsible for helping people get from point A to point B, for changing things, for managing. But as a consultant, it's been about 10 years, and it's really allowed me finally the freedom to talk about what I want to talk about, to not worry about who's paying me, to not worry, because, at first I just needed to make some money. But once I decided I know who I am and I want to be there, I am out there and audacious now, telling my truth. And you know what? If you're not right for me, the next bus will come along. Someone else will be.
Okay, so let's speak about that. So what would you like to talk about? What was it that you wanted to speak about going forward?
Well, I think for me or for your listeners, both. I think they diverge. I think that we all have a tendency in this world to be fearful about something, even when we say we're not fearful, right? Our addictions, our patterns, the things that we do to make ourselves comfortable keep us stuck. And what we want is just on the other side of letting go of that behavior. And we can't let go of that behavior for whatever reason. It could be historical, something in our past. It could be something that we just don't know. We know we want to get there, but we literally don't know how to be different. I think I'll give an example. I work with a lot of people who say, that's not the right page. Why aren't you looking at the right page? And I say to them, how else can you say that? Well, they're not on the right page. There's no other way to say that. There's 100 ways to say that. What page are we on? Are we on the same page? Do you think that's the right page, right? There are many ways to show up to other people instead of hitting them over the head. And sometimes, especially for people like me that are dyslexic and have a processing disorder where I need to see things in a sequential way, or I need to see them in what I call my dyslexia. I know everyone with dyslexia shows up a little different. Mine shows up like, if I don't have a file cabinet to put it into, I don't know what to do with those files, right? So I can't, if you just give me free floating ideas, I am never following you. I spent a lot of my life confused, and people either thought I was stupid or dumb or I didn't know what was going on, when really I knew everything going on. So what I like to talk about now is when we don't manage ourselves and our reactions to those people that don't understand us, we are setting up more barriers that need to be put down. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. No, total sense. Now, what was the process to managing yourself? Because obviously you had difficulty with dyslexia. I've got dyslexia myself, so I totally appreciate how difficult it is. And I totally understand when it comes to the filing cabinet situation. When you can physically see things and put them in boxes, it makes life easier than when you're in the virtual world and things float around and disappear and get forgotten about. So I totally understand that. But from your point of view, where was the path that took to you to structuring your life that made sense to you so you can go forward in a logical manner?
I think, can I curse?
You can, go ahead.
I think everything happens for a reason, right? I don't think everything happens for a reason. Strike that, reverse it, as Gene Wilder used to say as Willy Wonka. Strike that, reverse it. I think that things happen the way they're supposed to. They don't happen for a reason. And when I went to graduate school, I ended up taking a fuck you job. What's a fuck you job? It's a job that I did not want, but it was the most coveted job, right? I'm blessed. I went to Columbia University. I didn't know I was very smart. I went to a state school, but that's where I started to learn about this disability and how I'm processing things. And what do you know? When I started to learn differently and understand how to deal with that, I was pretty smart once I got away from my family and wasn't keep on told I was dumb, right? So I ended up going to graduate school at Columbia, and I did 2 masters, one in social work and one in public policy. And the creme de la creme job that everyone wanted from the public policy school was to work in an office of management and budget. Those are governmental offices that are basically the brains of the operation. And I really didn't want that job. So what happened? I went on the interview anyway. I wanted a nonprofit. I wanted to work in a philanthropy. They didn't have at that point any leads for that. So, the career advisor is like, Ilene, just go on the interview. And I didn't care. What happens when you don't care? You're relaxed. You're in yourself. You show up authentic. I was the only person to get hired for this office to manage budget. And I took the job as a fuck you to the other people to say, look how good I am. But what happened was, as a dyslexic, I had to start to learn numbers. Now, I really didn't understand statistics. I did. I mean, I passed and everything, but I all of a sudden am working with, for those of us that are old, Lotus, before even Lotus 1, 2, 3. We are doing SPSS. We are programming.
God, I remember that.
What, you remember it?
I remember that.
With the dot matrix printer. So that fuck you job taught me everything about budgets and numbers. And there is one thing that we learn about budgets and numbers. Everything has a root and everything works out. And that worked perfectly with my dyslexia. It was all about tables and charts and explaining the numbers, what was in the budget, what went behind it, the assumptions. Everything had a place and a structure, and it was organized. And from there, then you could see this part of the budget is out of whack. This is what has to be managed. These are the steps. This is a policy issue. This is a management issue. This is a money issue. So that job at OMB, New York City's Office of Management and Budget, played beautifully into my processing issues of needing a file cabinet, a virtual file cabinet, or a direct one. And from there, I really learned from how to look at numbers in the policy to how to change it and to how to actually manage the people to change the process to get what we wanted. So that was my career that really worked for me. but it didn't work for me in my personal life, and it didn't always work for me in management, because I had no problem telling you, you're on the wrong page. What's wrong with you? You're an idiot. I could see things and I didn't understand because I was insecure about my skill set and I thought I would be found out. So I showed up insecure. I had controlling behavior. I was anxious, and that made other people react to me a certain way. So that's when I really learned, as I became a consultant in the last 10 years. When I was a manager, those things didn't manage. I had I was liked by the mayor or the commissioner or the head of the CEO. I got the job done, and that was enough. They smoothed the feathers. But once I became a consultant, there was no one to smooth the feathers. And I, as a consultant, basically eat what I kill. You know what I mean by that, right? I'm like a hunter and gatherer. If I don't get a job and get paid, there's no money coming in. And I had to really learn how to show up in a different way that people wanted to relate to me, wanted me around, help them to grow, instead of showing up with my anxiety, controlling behavior, and being insecure.
Right. You say you had to learn. Okay. So you've now gone from the corporate job, being a consultant. So what made you have to learn very fast? What was those changes that made you think, oh my God, I have to change because maybe the money's not coming in or people aren't warming to you? Or what happened and what changes did you make from a personality trait point of view?
Yeah. This is very hard to admit. And I love that we're speaking, Eli, really honestly, like you said, we don't have a playbook. I became very jealous of other people that were very successful consultants. I knew they weren't as smart as me. I knew they hadn't had the experience I did of managing 10,000 people or changing a system or writing a special program that the agency was still running. I knew they didn't have that, but somehow they were much more successful. So jealousy was a driver for me. What did they have that I didn't have? And a lot of times they had those personal relationships. They had time to schmooze. They weren't focused on the work. They had time to, take it slow. I saw a problem, A to B. I was solving it for you. They took their time, got you used to the problem. So the first thing was jealousy. I saw how other consultants who were not, and I'm sorry, other consultants, but it's true, who, didn't have my experience and didn't have my skill set, were much more successful. So I had to see, why is that? And I had to be honest about, I'm like, I would think as a consultant, you're paying me, get it done, boom, 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 move along, right? But that's not what people wanted. They wanted to feel heard. They wanted to feel seen. They wanted to feel in control. They wanted to be in a relationship. So I had to do that, which was hard.
I was just about to ask you that. That's you're flipping your personality on its head, because you're very fast, very direct, very concise. So now all of a sudden you're in this world, you want to be a consultant, but to play the game, you have to do the opposite. You have to slow yourself down. You have to, faff around, beat around the mulberry bush, all those things that you inherently are not. How did you deal with that as a personality trait that you are?
Well, I think this comes into the heart of what I help people with. When you slow yourself down, you have to be comfortable with yourself. You have to be able to sit still. You can't be pointing the finger at the problem, the issue, the other people. You have to turn inward and know inwardly that it's okay the way it is. So I had to do a lot of inner work, believe it or not, a lot of inner child hearing work, a lot of work about what are my addictions I use, food, alcohol, shopping, what do I do when I get anxious? I had to think about what really was working in my life and what wasn't, and be brutally honest about, is that the type of person I want to be? I say the first thing I had to do was to actually think about who my future self was. What is the best version of myself, and how do I try to be that? And the best version of myself wears a very interesting necklace, and she floats in on air, and she just surveys the room and pauses. And people are drawn to her. So I had to think, how do I become that person? How do I attract people instead of promoting myself? How do I get people drawn to me? I had to learn to listen. I had to learn to slow down. So I had to learn to be comfortable in myself and not be anxious and push the issues. And, there's a lot of tricks to that, right? There's breathing, there's tapping, there's journaling. I'm a big fan of prayer, always. I'm one of those people who, there's a whole bunch of us that look at the clock every day at 11:11. Those people? Have you heard of that? So yeah. I'm one of those. So I see that 11:11 as a pause sign. If you remember it on the old VCR, that's what it looked like, pause. So I constantly have to put clues in my environment that slow me down. I have to put clues so that I stop and stop, stop and stop, and then go forward.
Okay, let's talk about that. Now, what do you mean about you put clues in your environment to slow you down? What does that exactly mean?
That means that when I started this, and you can notice even in this conversation, I realized I'm excited. I'm talking to Eli. When you asked, I slowed down, right? My tone has changed. I used to have a big red stop sign behind my desk. I used to actually see it. Stop. I would have it when my computer starts up. Stop. I'd have it on my phone. On days that I was really bad, I don't have a tattoo, but I would put something right there so I would look at it. I had to literally give myself cues. Use a mug that says it. Sometimes I would have to do ridiculous things like, make an obstacle course for myself so I didn't rush through the kitchen or something, right? I got to go around this. Maybe I put the couch in a place that wasn't convenient, so I had to slow down and make a turn. Literally change my environment to change what's inside.
That's amazing. Now, I take it, as you said, you help other people do the same thing, but I also take it that it's unique to them with the cues they need.
Correct.
Obviously, so you've got to find exactly what works for them. You've gone through this transformation yourself, and I'm guessing that the transformation didn't happen overnight.
No, it's a process.
Exactly. So how did you know how to bespoke this actual whole process for other people? Because those cues have to be unique to them.
Well, this is part of my training as both a social worker and a policy person. I can look at the big world and the universe and the research. And frankly, there are a lot of people out there that talk about, you can do tapping, you can do journaling, you can speak to someone, you can do breathing exercises, right? There are a lot of different techniques and tools, right? Especially since, I survived 9/11, but especially since 9/11 and COVID, we focus more on mental health and giving people those tools. So I find that I don't have to teach you those tools. I have to say, go find one. And I help people understand what doesn't work for them. My favorite example is yoga. I can make fun of yoga all day. I don't know if you do yoga, but I can make fun of yoga all day because for years I wanted to be a yogi. That was going to be the thing, right? My body was going to become long and lean, and I was going to be one. I was going to stand in tree pose and be with the universe. I would put the yoga clothes on. I'd look for the best yoga studio. I'd find the teacher people liked. I'd buy the class, and I never went to a yoga class. I had to get a coffee. I was late. I couldn't show up for the yoga class. So what I actually do is show people where they're out of alignment. You say it's yoga, but you never do it. So maybe we should try something else. What can you do? I always joke, what is the best exercise to do for your health? Eli, do you know the best exercise?
I'd probably sleep.
Well, that's a good answer, but it's the one that you're actually going to do, not think about. It is different for everybody. So I don't have to create the best exercise, the best this, the best body type, the best therapy. It's out there. I just have to help you to see you're not doing it. That's not working for you. Let's be honest about it. And then to find one that actually works for you, which is genius because I can leave it to the people out there that are true experts in that. And I can know a lot about, what's out there, what kind of therapy and EMDR and, DBT and all these different types of therapy, but I don't have to be a specialist. I can have you go on the journey. And that's important too, especially as someone who, is an addict. I always want the answer, right? I want it. I want to be heard. And this journey is part of what slows you down. I always used to joke and say I'm a I'm a process challenge social worker, because we know social workers are all about the process, but it really is about the journey. So I find that when I was working with people and telling them, this is how you do it, put the signs up, they weren't doing it. They had to be invested along the way in the journey. And, that light bulb moment when they say, I do yoga, I'm like, okay, or I do this. And I show them, I have a tool called the pie chart alignment. And I show them, this is your time, this is your money, this is your energy. This is what you say you want to do. This is how you spend your money. And this is where you're spending your time. They are not in sync. Like the yoga example, I would spend my money on yoga clothes, I'd buy the yoga classes, but my time was not going there. And my intent or my energy was never showing up in yoga. So I had to let go of wanting to do yoga. So I help them through that process and get them bought in and give them, a lot of small action steps. Try this out, try that. Did you look at this? When's the time you did exercise, right? So I don't have to solve the problem. I have to help them get through to solve their own problem.
Having that independence so they can go on and just be successful in their own right.
Right. I was talking to a guy last week. He goes, don't worry, I have a treadmill in my basement, and I said to him, right, when's the last time you looked at it? And when, oh yeah, the treadmill. Finally, I was like, seriously, when is the last time you looked at the treadmill? Probably 6 years ago. That guy is never using that treadmill. Yeah. So, it's a conversation about that is not what's going to work for you. Maybe the option is to sell the treadmill to get something else, but to help people also be truly honest. Because we live in a world where it's really easy not to be honest. It's really easy to hide behind our disability, our addiction, our job,
Definitely.
Our money. Yeah. And I really have to tell them, when what's that thing? Like you asked the biggest question to changing. When you're alone in the middle of the night and you can't sleep, and you stop with, worrying about, where did I park my car? I didn't do that. Or is there enough money in the bank account? When those, squirrels in your head or whatever you call them, the monkeys stop and they land on you, can you sit with yourself? What is the story you tell yourself? And that's the hardest thing to do. And that's what I help people do.
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard for people to just look themselves in the mirror. It's hard for them to accept who they are. And I'm always discussing this on the podcast with the listeners, that it's important to accept. And if you don't like what you see, then you know what you need to change. If you do like what you see, then you go forward with great prevalence. It's as simple as that, but that's as simple as that on black and white paper. You hit
the nail on the head. A lot of people tell you this is how you change. This is what you should do, but they don't actually sit with you through the change process. I have wanted to let go of certain beliefs about my childhood forever, right? Forever. I just, because the problem is when you look at yourself, like those things were true, right? They actually happened. I'm not making them up. But that was I'm 63, right? So those things were 50 years ago when I was 13 years old, right? How much of my story, I like to look at a piece of paper and say, like, they're this much of my story. I make them this whole thing, but it's this much because I've had so many experiences. So I want to let go of those things. So it's not like, okay, I can take a pill and say, here it is, and now I'm going to let go. It is a true process of debunking that belief, thinking about who I want to be. I look at it a lot like touching it, coming back, seeing what it feels like. It doesn't have to be, that black and white approach, which I did for a lot of years, does not work. It has to be a dimmer switch, and we have to get comfortable with what that change is. Yeah. And a lot of programs take you through, here's what you could do, and I'll take you through 30 days, but they don't really take you through that psychological part that we keep fighting it, and why we want to go back to the comfort, and why it's so hard to look at ourselves. So, and the kicker of all this is I usually work with CEOs and leaders who have, a bunch of staff and a bunch of people under them, depending on them for their livelihood and their economic status. So how do I help that CEO or leader actually understand what they're doing that impacts that company's growth so that they can all grow, because everyone does it. It's not, successful people do it too. We get stuck in those old patterns that keep us from moving forward.
Totally, and it happens continuously for the rest of our lives. Some people are better off at dampening those things, so 90% of the time you're cool. Other people struggle from 50-50, and it's different for everybody. And I see over and over again, successful entrepreneurs go through a state of a lot of difficulty in their life. You don't go from 1 to 100 overnight. It doesn't happen like that. For you to be a strong leader or for you to be successful in whatever, you have to go through your troubles, right? Your issues. And you continuously do. We're forever learning. So I'm interested in you regarding your dyslexia going back, because I'm thinking you have a huge amount of energy. You have a lot of confidence. Of course, you have your dark days. You have your difficult days. But that's obviously come through with a lot of experience with what you've gone through, which is what you've already described yourself with. But if you could go back with hindsight, and I say with hindsight, where you can remember where your dyslexia affected you in a big way, could you go and do that? As far
as I can go right back to 4th grade math. That's where it all went off the table. That's where it was. Actually 3rd grade probably. Eileen's not as smart as her sisters. Eileen doesn't get it. Maybe Eileen needs special help. Maybe she needs tutoring. So right there, that's where I started not understanding how they were teaching me and starting to be disinterested.
Okay. So when you had that issue, how did you feel? With hindsight now, what was you going through? Because obviously your sisters were so-called more cleverer than you, your sisters were better than you, and so on and so forth. So just go through how you felt and how you dealt with that journey at that particular time when you were so young.
Well, that's one of the things that I talked about, that story that I tell myself that I took into my future. I'm the black sheep. Now I joke about it and they say I was the black sheep, like that's a bad thing, right? But it was a bad thing. I was different from them. So if I was different from them, I became different from them. I didn't follow the rules. I became, a joiner. I joined the Girl Scouts and I joined the swim team. None of my sisters were athletes, right? I made myself different, which was smart even then, right? I wasn't going to compete with them in the, AP classes and the advanced and the honors and, and the way they played the cello. That was never going to happen. So I played in a different ballpark. The interesting thing about that is my parents didn't care about the other ballpark. So they never really gave me the confidence or the support that I needed. Yeah, they made sure I got to and from, the activities, but I wasn't a superstar. I was just one of, and, my father never came to see me in a swim meet. I didn't play an instrument, but I turned the pages, the piano turner, which now everybody knows can ruin a whole concert. But the school, looking back on it, so the thing I missed there were people, teachers, mentors, coaches, who were put in my path to help me. And I didn't see that. I didn't know to trust them. I didn't understand that hand that they were giving me. I just, wanted to not, get beat up at home and, just trying to get through this. So I didn't really understand how to elevate myself. I always kept on thinking I'm the problem. So let me just be out of their way. Let me do something else. Let me not compete with them. Instead of saying, maybe which I say now, only in the last few years, maybe I'm I'm definitely not the problem. And I have something to give and I want to do it differently. So I think, with the hindsight, it's believing in myself. It's about understanding that, the way that my family measured success isn't necessarily the way that's not my value and how I want to measure success.
Okay. And when did that belief take rise? Did that take rise when you left school and you went to college or uni, or when did that belief system start to take effect?
I'm a slow boil. It takes a very long time. So first I believed that I thought I was so different than my family, but if I had money, if I had, a house and 2 cars and this and that, I would be okay. And then I got all those things. That was in my 40s, and it wasn't okay. There was some illnesses, there was a divorce. So since my 40s, the last 20 years, I've really been on a journey about what is it? For me, a big driver, the one belief that I always believed, that a little different than my family, was community, belonging. You're a member of this, you show up, you give, you help others, you work together, right? We're all on this earth for a reason, to help each other. So I did always show up as a member of community. I always had friends, I always had places to go, I always had parties, I always had events, I always had a purpose. But it really took me the last 20 years to say, what is it that I value as success? And I can tell you, one of those beliefs is what I already said. When I lie alone in the middle of the night and I can't sleep and there's no one else around me, can I be comfortable in myself? Doesn't matter what other people think. Doesn't matter what this one has. Can I sit with myself? That is a huge driver. And that means every day, like you said, I have to do the right thing. I have to take the right steps to be that person that I'm comfortable with. So that's a huge driver for me. But I didn't really see it till the last few years. You know, I kept on trying to outrun my path, have enough money, have enough this, have this life, a book, a this, a that, get validation. I will be okay. And the truth is, you know, it's said a million different ways by a million different people. It's an inside job. I have to like myself. Matter of fact, I have to love myself. I think the key ingredient here that I might not be getting your question exactly is I had to learn how to self-soothe, right? I couldn't count on my mother or food or alcohol or money or a boyfriend or sex. I had to learn to actually calm myself down, because it's not something I learned as a child. And being dyslexic, I didn't make sense of it the way everybody else made sense of it, right? What would calm them down to work didn't work for me. So that ability to actually self-soothe, be able to sit still, to say it's okay, to say I'm okay, has been, I think, the biggest kind of belief that has helped me to now say, not only am I okay, I'm worthy, and I have something to share.
Wow, you've gone through a very long journey, and a hard one at that. I know we've just skimmed the surface, and it hasn't been easy for you. And even when you got married, the dyslexic side of you also was still struggling, because you lacked the confidence in so many ways, because obviously in a way you was hiding certain things, because obviously you didn't want to come across stupid, because that's how you felt when you was younger. And I know how you feel, because I felt exactly the same way. You tend to hide a lot of things, and especially at a time when there's not much support when it came to dyslexia. So you tend to feel that you're not worthy. You know, you're not a person that should be doing this and doing that, and then you end up hiding. So I totally understand your journey, because in the last couple of years, I've only ended up accepting who I was, and that I totally understand how you feel. You then in a position where you feel I am worthy. You don't really care, you know, what other people think, because you shouldn't do, because it's okay being different. You don't have to be the same, and it's actually a good thing not being the same, you know, because this is how you give something different to other people. But more importantly, it's something you give something different to you as a person, as an individual, where it should always start from. It's not about anybody else, but it's about accepting who you are. And while you accept who you are, you can then go forward in a massive way. So you obviously had issues still with the confidence that was drilled into you, and you've obviously got married. I take it you had children.
One daughter.
Had one daughter.
Broke the cycle with that one. She's a goodie.
Oh, there you go. How did it affect you in your 20s stroke 30s? How did that dyslexia, and it may not be down to writing, but a dyslexia could be a situation where it affected your confidence and anything else. How did that affect your 20s and 30s as you was going through that journey of yours?
Yeah, I think I was always looking for validation, so I leaned on people too much, right? I like to say, like, it was like if they were a life preserver, I drowned them because I wanted them to say, I was okay, you're smart, I hear you, you're okay. And even though I was doing very well in my career with that OMB job, and I had a lot of trouble dating, I had a lot of trouble meeting I date men, and I had a lot of trouble meeting men who could both understand that I'm very intelligent, but I can also be very clueless. I don't know if your dyslexia shows up like that, but right, there are certain things I really get, and then there are things I just can't put together.
Yeah.
I can't remember, and I don't know.
Yeah.
So it showed up like that. And I actually had a very big heartbreak story. My ex-husband was actually a gambler. So we both had like that addictive personality. I used drugs and alcohol, and he was a gambler, and he was an accountant. And he made it like I'm too stupid to understand the money. And I never wanted to fight him on that. Of course I'm too stupid. He's an accountant. He has a master's in accounting, blah, 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 blah. Ends up that my ex-husband gambled all our money away and hid the bank statement from me. And I was too stupid and too insecure to ask. And so talk about like, how did it affect me? So I found myself in my mid 30s, with a daughter, totally broke and on my own because I trusted someone who I was like, well, every time I wanted to see the bank statement, oh, you don't understand it. You don't know. I'll show it to you tomorrow. And I was busy. I had a big job. I was raising a kid, member of my community, showing up, volunteering, until one day I got home first. I opened the bank statements and there it was. So it had a very devastating effect on me and being that insecure. And now I tell that story because we hear stories about women who were, abused emotionally and financially. And having to start over, I mean, it's a big one, it's a big one. And trusting those people who are supposed to honor you, especially a husband, trust is a big thing to wrap your hands around. And I've learned that dyslexia didn't let me trust myself because I don't understand why you don't get it. I understand you're a smart girl. Why can't you remember it? I don't understand why you don't do good on the test, right? Because I was constantly getting those messages. It spilled over into my personal life in a big way that I didn't take care of what needed to be taken care of. Me.
So would it be right to say that was one of the big points in your life where a change had to be made effect, when you realized enough was enough and you had to make some changes, regardless of you being insecure because of what you had gone through, regardless because you were dyslexic and you were trying to hide it, regardless, was that one of the biggest changes that made you make the new pathway to your life?
I'm not going for the sympathy vote here, but
I know that.
The story is I was in chemotherapy for a very, very rare cancer. So we were living in New York City. My ex-husband, because I really couldn't walk, I had no energy. I had a full, strong round of chemo. And those days, they didn't give you they didn't want you to be comfortable. They wanted you to suffer, that you're going to get better. My ex-husband had to drop me off at the apartment and then take the car to the parking lot because, it was hard to park on the street. And I got the mail first. So I'm in chemotherapy. I had just survived, it's called gestational trophoblastic disease. Like 20 women a year in the country get it. 2 survive. 98% die. I had just survived this. Talk about how do I not feel worthy? I believe in God. God has a plan for me. And then I find out I'm broke. So it was a real 1-2 punch. So I can't separate the two. So, I just somehow, yes, I knew, I had to borrow money from my mother. I had to buy him to get him out of the house. I had to, and at the same time, the job situation changed. So yes, that was one of the points where I realized I had to do it differently. That was maybe, I was 39 at that point, and that was probably the start. That's why I say the last 20 years have really been the journey for me. Up until then, everything I thought was working great, marriage, kid, the good job, the promotions, this, that. And that was really when I said, wow, I've got to change what I'm doing, because how did I not know that my husband was lying to me? And how can I not believe that God or the universe has my back if I just survived this incredibly rare cancer?
And at that point, again, you had to face yourself to accept the situation for what it was, without hiding and manipulating the situation yourself, because you wanted to believe that your life was this and your life was that. So you had to go through that start of accepting the situation, accepting who you were and where you want to be and who you want to be.
Yes. And do I have the friends I want? Do I have the family? So if I want to be a good community member, I have to start showing up every week to temple. If I want to do this, I have to start, actually donating my money there. If I want to do that, I have to set those boundaries and be that person with my friends. I had to actually not just think about doing it, but taking those steps. I live in the middle of the country, very desolate now. And unfortunately, when some people visit, especially from the city, right, like they drop their ashtray, or they spill their coffee out of their car, right? And, when they come, in the driveway, and I look at them and I say, who's cleaning that up? There's no sanitation. There's no caretaker. There's no super, right? This is me. And that's the lesson I learned. If I don't take care of it, talk about literally realizing there's no mother, there's no boyfriend, there's no husband. It's only me. I have to take care of it. That was the lesson. No matter how tired, no matter how scared, no matter how unable I am, right? It was me and my daughter. I mean, she does have a relationship with a father, but he did not raise her after, stealing the money. It says a lot about who he is. And, I had to really learn how to prioritize and show up and I have to say, even that, my behavior was go, 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 take action right away. So if I do this, do that. So I was always trying to outrun who I was, trying to outrun and not do that sitting still thing. But,
Well, it's understandable you was trying to outrun, because the thing is, you had been hit by so many things. You had the cancer, you found out that your husband had been gambling, you found out your husband, was doing many other things, as well as all the other things you haven't shared. So you had a lot of outpacing to do, to be honest.
Right.
At the time, you can't go slow with those things at the same junction, right?
Yes. But you make a good point, because that's exactly right, though. But what the thing is, what the trick is, at points in my life, and I've been both, blessed in that, right? I had the cancer reflection point. I had to have a hip replacement at a very early age, pain, this, that, a reflection point, right? I had, I survived 9/11. I was a block away, another reflection point. So I have had some really big things in my life that made me say, but, some people think the cancer would be enough, but, I needed constant reminders, Eileen, get back on that path, make that path narrow, and, and remember who you are and what you want to do, and believe in yourself. And that over the last 20 years, whenever I get a little off field, or whenever, I can get very busy, because part of, I don't know if it's dyslexic or the addict, but, I get what they call perseveration. It's a learning disability. Do you know what it is?
No,
Like if you see a list of math problems and they're all addition, but one is subtraction, I cannot see the subtraction. I'm just going to keep on adding. I perseverate. I just keep on doing the same thing, even though there's different information to do something else.
That makes
sense.
sense.
So, right. So I might not have liked the job, but I was getting money. I was doing this. It was busy. I just kept on doing it. So I had to really, at a certain point, say, when one of these things happened, like 9/11, are you actually happy? Right. And sometimes that happiness had to be tempered by, I need to make money. I'm a daughter. I have no money in the bank. I have to work at that job. I call it the toll booth jobs, right? Even though I didn't like them, they made me the money and I had to pay the rent or the mortgage. So, but I've been blessed. And most recently, not to get too personal, I had a heart attack. And another 9 weeks ago, a small heart attack. Look at me. I'm very healthy. I'm very happy. But another time to say.
With loads of energy too.
What?
You got lots of energy too. It's amazing.
It's just relaxed. Even my doctor said, "You're the most relaxed I've ever seen you. How'd you have a heart attack?" I'm like, I don't know, but it's hereditary. You can't outrun that. My father died at 46 of a heart attack. His mother at 50. But I'm blessed. It was a small heart attack. They found, I'm so blessed. Now I'm on the right path. But the point of that, it was another point to say, slow down. The road's narrow. What do you want? What are you doing? What are you really going after? Because even though I've been really blessed and have been successful in working with people and had some very important jobs, the things that I want to do have sometimes gotten lost along the way because I had to take care of my daughter, or I just got stuck in that perseverating. Oh, I'm making money. I'm doing it. Let's just stay there. So, this last call to action, let's call it, heart incident was really a reminder of what's important in my life and what I want. And I think that that's another thing I try to help people with. You don't have to have cancer or a heart attack or have your husband clean out your bank accounts to realize to do those reassessments. We have New Year's, we have birthdays, but we need to do an annual inventory, an annual cleaning to really think, here's who I want to be, that vision of who I am, and here's who I am, and how can I get closer and closer.
Okay, so let's look at your inventory. What's important in your life now you've had to revisit that inventory?
My daughter is basically the most important thing. Did I give her enough skills to make it in this world? And did I tell her that I love her enough? I have one child, part of the cancer. I couldn't have more children. So that is very important. Second is the community I choose to live in. Am I part of the solution? Yes, I'm the chair of the town finance committee. I show up at the events. I volunteer to get things done. Do I help those people around me? That's what's important to me right now. And then I have this big dog. So, I'm taking care of the dog because he brings me a lot of joy, right? So, did I walk Beauregard?
That's absolutely beautiful. And I take it when we visited your inventory, it was similar to what you revisited before. So it didn't really change because you had already accepted yourself. If you had already accepted yourself, you actually were going in the right path because you were facing yourself in the mirror. So I'm guessing it was pretty much the same as it was before.
Yes, but let me tell you something. So it gets narrower. And one thing, we all kind of have a bucket list, right? If I look back on it, I wanted to be a sports, not a sportscaster. I wanted to be a news announcer. I love to talk. I'm animated. I understand things quickly when they're given to me. And, in those days, I wasn't, thin enough, tall enough, this looking enough. I never thought, I was heavy. I could never be a newscaster. Well, on my bucket list is not to climb Mount Everest. It is not to, parasail on the Fiji Islands. On my bucket list is to create a project or to create a product or get a patent, to have something that I leave with my name on it. And since the heart attack, maybe, because I had even though I'm blessed and look at me, but, I had to take it easy for a few weeks. It's like an ankle. If you sprain your ankle, you have to work it back up to strength. You have to do the same thing with your heart. I have always wanted to create a product, and I've had an idea. And I, during this time, applied to a reality TV show that creates products. It's called The Blocks. BLOX. I don't know if you ever heard of it. And I think they're going into the 13th season, and they take entrepreneurs. They interview about 50,000 people. They get a class of maybe 60, 70 people, and they help you, or they compete who's going to have the next great company and the next product. And I got accepted to be on the show. Wow. So that is something, if I didn't have that little heart attack, I don't know if when that inbox, if I saw that ad, I would have clicked on it. So
that sounds wonderful. So your life is actually going in so much in the right direction for you.
Yes.
Oh, that's absolutely stunning. Okay, so let's talk about your business. How do you help people from the point of view? Do you help them one-to-one individually, or do you help them in a group setting, corporate? How does that whole structure work?
So I basically offer 3 services. One is speaking, where I come in and speak to groups. It could be at a conference, it could be at a corporation, and I really give you a new perspective of how you're in your own way, and then talk through some of these tools. I'm not going to tell you what therapy, but and give you some exercises so that you can see yourself honestly, from a 60 perspective. So that's motivational speaking. I love that. I love getting in front of groups. Next, I work one-on-one, usually with CEOs or team leaders, about how they're showing up and how they're showing up with the team. And that usually goes into way 3, which is then I work with their entire team to help them change their perspective, co-heath, and then, be in a better place than they were before to function.
So do you work with them online too?
Yes, I do online, in person. I once tried to create a course, and I decided that I cannot, like we talked about before. What I do is so individual. It's to your industry, it's to your specific issues, your specific team, that I can give you the outline, and I keep a blog, and I wrote a book, but I really need to work one-on-one. So now, especially, some of my clients are not in the area I live, so there's always some face-to-face at critical moments. There's online, there's calls, there's meetings, a lot of homework.
I'm telling you. I like the idea of doing bespoke, because life is like that, isn't it? We're all individuals, and it's the way it should be. So having that bespoke side of things, it makes you successful much more faster, because instead of guessing and trying to walk someone else's shoes, you're able to walk your own shoes, and very fast. So, okay. So how can people contact you for your services? Or how do they seek you out?
So they can Google me, Ilene, Ilene Marcus.com. I'm known for my book. I don't know if most people listening, Managing Annoying People. So if you Google Managing Annoying People, I usually pop up, and you can find me. And of course on LinkedIn and Facebook, Ilene Marcus, or Managing Annoying People.
Well, thank you. Well, to be honest, I don't think you're annoying whatsoever. So as much as you said you're a very annoying person, I thought you was a pleasure to speak with. Yeah. So, but who knows? Maybe
because you're meeting me post change. You're meeting me years later.
Very true. Very true, and I'm blessed to be able to be in that position. So thank you, Ilene.
I'm blessed too.
Really appreciate you, and listeners, as always, I'll have the information down below, so you can actually copy or paste, do what you want, and click away to contact her. And as you can see, she has an expansive life, where she just brings that into the business, and this is how she can go bespoke, because she can see between the lines. And as you can see, she's got plenty of energy, so you'll never have a boring moment with her whatsoever. And then again, who wants to be with someone that's quite numb? She'll keep you on your toes, but at the same time, she'll keep you focused to what you need for your lifestyle, be that business or, as she said, now personal. Either or either, it really doesn't matter. Before we go, Ilene, is there anything you want to say, summing it up?
Well, I want to say, remember that your reactions speak louder than your actions. So when you're looking at who you are and how you relate to people, remember, it's not just what you plan to say, it's what you say in that moment when you get crazy or upset or anxious and insecure. So really think about your reactions, not only your actions.
And with that said, listeners, sayonara, and I will see you very soon.